Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into our time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Some people didn't think that Ronald Coleman had much in the way of comedy chops. That's until the Jack Benny Show cast him as his neighbor, and you heard Ronald Coleman and Benita Coleman with some serious comedy. That's how they got the show The Halls of Ivy. This was originally broadcast January 27th, 1950. It's all about Mr. Wellman's nose.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Joseph Schlitz Brewing Company of Milwaukee, Wisconsin presents The Halls of Ivy, starring Mr. and Mrs. Ronald Coleman.
I was curious. I tasted it. Now I know why Schlitz is the beer that made Milwaukee famous.
If you like good beer, you'll find it pays to be curious and learn about Schlitz for yourself. Now, The Halls of Ivy.
In all the halls of ivy that surround us here today, and we will not forget though we be far, far away.
Welcome again to Ivy. Ivy College, that is, in the town of Ivy, USA. Dr. Hall, William Todhunter Hall, the president of Ivy, has problems shared by Mrs. Hall, the former Victoria Cromwell of the London stage. Problems not entirely curricular. Their immediate worry concerns the sudden and so far undiagnosed illness of a last night's dinner guest, Mr. Clarence Wellman, who's now recovering, everybody hopes, from an outrageously swollen nose in the extra bedroom.
Toddy, may I tell you something?
Of course, my dear. What is it?
You are the only man I know who can pace back and forth while sitting motionless in a chair.
Well, I'm worried, Victoria. Seeing the nose of the chairman of the Board of Governors turn a violent crimson immediately after he has dined as a guest in one's house is a privilege granted few college presidents. I say privilege in the sense that seeing the Grand Canyon at sunset is a privilege. Do you think Penny did something to his gluten bread?
There's nothing you can do to gluten bread. You either eat it or throw it away.
So. But Mr. Wellman's illness distresses me. He and I have clashed over policy ever since his election to the board, and he's almost certain now, consciously or unconsciously, to lay both his nose and his stomach squarely at my door.
Well, really?
Well, you know what I mean. Do you suppose he'll recover in time to participate in the Charter Day ceremony?
I doubt it. He'd never have stayed here all night unless he really felt awful, and his nose looked it. Couldn't you postpone it for a while?
Postpone the Charter Day ceremony?
Yes. Why must it begin precisely at 10 o'clock?
Well, for the same reason that the guards at Buckingham Palace wear those towering bearskins instead of our freshman beanies. It's traditional. It's been traditional for the Charter Day ceremony to begin at 10 ever since that morning back in 1640, when the governor of the colony granted a small group of pirates, smugglers, and slave dealers the right to found the college for the propagation of all virtues. Virtues which, by the way, if practiced by the founders, would have kept them much too poor to do anything of the sort. Now, I...
Lost the thread?
I seem to have lost the entire spool. Yes. I was discussing tradition. Now, I hold no brief for tradition as such, but there are some traditions which are valuable and should, I feel, be maintained. Especially in these days, when the notion prevails that the highest aim of all human endeavor is to guess correctly, for a fabulous prize, the name of some popular song. I also...
Excuse me, sir.
Oh, what is it, Penny?
A young man at the door. says he's a photographer from some picture magazine.
Oh, yes. Have him come in.
Yes, sir. A photographer?
Yes. The publishers phoned yesterday and asked if they could send someone to take pictures for an early issue. In addition to shots of the ceremony, they want a few of me. You know, the sort of thing, the president of Ivy having breakfast, donning his cap and gown, and silly, of course, and a bother, but perhaps of value to the school.
Shall I leave?
Oh, no, not at all. I don't think you'll disturb him. He'll merely photograph me at this end of the room. Where are my cap and gown?
On the chair behind you.
Do I look all right?
Like the very model of a college president.
Dr. Hall?
Yes, good morning.
I'm Luther Bland of Exposure Magazine.
Of course. How do you do? Victoria, may I introduce Mr. Bland? Mr. Bland?
Vicky Cromwell, isn't it?
Why, yes. Well, that is, I was before.
I was in love with you once for a whole week.
How nice.
When you entertained the troops at Anzio. Oh, you don't remember me, of course, but I can still hear you singing, "Cool ain't I the one, though."
Mr. Bland, I was thinking that if you did come here to take pictures...
Oh, yes, sir.
Perhaps one of me is standing here, near the window.
Would you mind raising the blind, sir, for a bit more light?
Yes, there. Now, how's that?
Swell. Now, Mrs. Hall, if I could trouble you for a smile.
Like this?
Yes. Dr. Hall, you're throwing a shadow on her. Perhaps if you stood behind me.
Oh, yes, of course.
Good. Now, hold it, Mrs. Hall.
Now, this might make a good one. One of me sitting at the table.
Mrs. Hall, I'd like one of you... Well, one of you with your eyes sort of crinkling above the rim of the coffee cup.
How's this?
Dr. Hall.
Yes?
If you held back the curtain, there would be a better highlight in her hair. Good. But stand back a bit further or you'll be in the frame.
Yes, we mustn't have that, must we?
A bit more crinkle, Mrs. Hall. Good.
That's a very nice camera you have.
I even remember the dress you wore at Anzio.
Well, it was intended that everyone should.
I used to own a camera.
We remembered you all right, Mrs. Hall. The dress and everything in it.
I'm very flattered, Mr. Bland.
It was a Brownie box camera. First prize for Sunday school attendance.
Sort of hold up the coffee pot, Mrs. Hall, as though you were about to pour. That's it.
Had a little carrying strap, I remember.
Now, Dr. Hall.
Yes?
How about one of you?
Well, if you have any film left,
Well, one of you with Mrs. Hall. Now, let's see now. Suppose she sort of fixes your tie.
Oh, like this?
Exactly. I think I'll shoot it over Dr. Hall's shoulder. No, don't turn your head around to me, sir. Look at her.
Yeah, if I may suggest a caption, the former Miss Victoria Crumble, star of English stage and friend.
Well, I think that will give me all we need on this angle.
Really? All you need?
Mm-hmm. Now, sir, can you tell me something about the ceremony itself so I'll have an idea on how to plan my shots?
Well, at 9:55, there will be a knock at my front door.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a messenger from the chief proctor. Customarily, the messenger is the youngest member of the student body.
Who is it this year?
A prodigy named Merton Savada, who is, I believe, not quite 14.
A freshman at 13?
No, not a freshman. He is at present working for his master's degree. He took his A.B. at Columbia last year. Then, at 10 o'clock, the procession will come to a halt in front of this house. And the chief proctor will knock upon the door 3 times with his staff of office. Your readers may be interested in a picture of that staff, because picture magazines do have readers, don't they?
I think some of our subscribers can read.
Yes. Well, the proctor's staff was fashioned from the limb of a walnut tree.
Mm-hmm.
Sent as a gift by the University of Paris and brought to this country by Benjamin Franklin. At the knock, I open the door and, accompanied by the chairman of the board, stand on the front steps. At our appearance, a tenor soloist sings Gaudium Zigiter a cappella.
It's very, very impressive, Mr. Bland. I get a lump in my throat every time I see it.
Well, then the chairman of the board takes his place at the head of the procession and leads it to the chapel. I follow. Once there, several hymns, a few speeches, the reading of the charter, and it's all over.
Well, it sounds most interesting, Doctor. Thanks very much for your help, sir. I'll be going over to the North Gate now.
Yes, I hope I didn't spoil any of your pictures by getting my shadow into them.
I don't think so. I was pretty careful. Goodbye, Mrs. Hall. Wonderful to have seen you again.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Right. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Oh, what a nice young man. How well you describe the charter day, Toddy. There's so many things that puzzle me about these school ceremonies. You always manage to make them so clear.
Well, thank you, but what sort of things, Vicky?
Well, for instance, why is it that ceremony where you award the diplomas called commencement when it always comes at the end of the school year?
That's a very good question.
I thought so.
Well, commencement, as everyone knows. You know, Vicky, I have a theory about Mr. Wellman's nose. I suspect that it's the result of simple, ordinary stage fright.
Stage fright?
Yes. I think that he is so terrified at making his speech at the Charter Day ceremonies that his subconscious mind has come rushing to his aid with a geranium effect on his nose. He wants to be excused from speaking and doesn't even realize it.
Well, I certainly know a lot of ways to treat stage fright.
For example?
Well, it's all a matter of psychology. Every actress is a practicing psychologist, you know, whether she knows it or not.
Yes, but in Mr. Wellman's case...
In Mr. Wellman's case, we must first make up our minds that we will simply ignore his nose.
That's quite a hurdle, Victoria. It's a bit like asking a traveling architect to ignore the Taj Mahal.
Nevertheless, dear, we must not concentrate on the very thing we're trying to relieve. In his case, his nose.
Well, what do we concentrate on? If I may end a sentence with a preposition, and in my own home, I think I may.
We must not refer to his nose. We must build up his confidence in himself with praise. We must say nice things to him. What can we say nice about Mr. Wellman?
Can you give me a few minutes on that?
Certainly, dear.
Now, let me see. I have never seen him actually kick a dog.
From January 27th, 1950, the Halls of Ivy on Classic Radio Theater. Classic Radio Theater family, you know our friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. He didn't stop by just creating the best pillow. He created the best bed sheets ever. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me because, you know, I'm working like 67 hours a day. Now, Mike's offering the best deal on his Giza Dreams bed sheets ever. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. You'll never want to sleep on anything else once you slept on a set of Giza Dream sheets. A special offer for you right now. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. Call 1-800-928-4715. Use the promo code Wyatt. Or go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Wyatt. It's good on anything on the website. That number again, 1-800-928-4715. Use my promo code Wyatt. Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, more of the Halls of Ivy and Mr. Wellman's Nose, January 27th, 1950.
That surround us here today.
Now that Dr. Hall has had a few minutes to think of some redeeming feature of Mr. Wellman's character and to remember not to concentrate on his nose, maybe he... No, too late. Here's the subject himself.
Good morning, Mr. Wellman.
Good morning, Mr. Wellman.
Good morning to you both.
Won't you sit down?
Thank you. Is there something amiss with my necktie? You both keep staring at me.
Oh, no. It's a very handsome necktie. I was admiring it.
Thank you. My daughter gave it to me. I have always believed she has excellent taste.
Oh, her good taste is quite obvious, Mr. Wellman. As plain, in fact, as the...
As the shoes on your feet.
That's rather an odd simile.
I do hope you're feeling better this morning.
I'm still a bit queasy.
Oh, that's too bad. I wonder if you'd care to try a rather old remedy many people I know have used with much success.
I would be grateful for almost anything.
Well, what did you have in mind, Victoria?
Have we any shingle nails, William?
Shingle nails?
Shingle nails? Isn't that a rather ridiculous...
Never mind. Let it go. I knew you'd think it was ridiculous, Mr. Wellman.
No, Mrs. Hall, I'm sorry. Tell me, I don't care if this idea was suggested by a Hindu voodoo man. You were saying something about shingle nails. How do I eat them?
No, you don't eat them, Mr. Wellman. You place the point of the nail against your left thumb, put the head of the nail against your right thumb, and think about something else for 5 minutes. Will you go get a shingle nail, William?
Well, don't just stand there, Dr. Hall. Get her a shingle nail.
A shingle nail? Yes. I'll see if I can find one.
Thank you, dear. Now, please sit down, Mr. Wellman.
Thank you. No, I'm too restless, Mrs. Hall. This shingle nail thing. I've often wondered just how much scientific basis there was for some of our odd superstitions. Perhaps this shingle nail business has some magnetic property that, now steel now, and electric, negative, and positive, and all that.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be a bit surprised.
I'm sorry, Vicky, but I couldn't find a shingle nail. But here's a horseshoe nail. Would that do?
Wonderful, William. Simply wonderful. It really takes a horseshoe nail. I had no idea there was one in the house. But I think a shingle nail is a good thing to have in reserve, just in case. Take another look, will you, please?
Yes, I'll be very glad to.
That's a dear.
I think I know exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Well, let me take the nail, Mrs. Hall. Now, how do I hold it? Like this?
No. The point against the left thumb. That's it. Now, the head against the right thumb. Now, just hold it. We just talk. Get your mind off it.
What shall we talk about?
Oh, the weather, television, stock market, your speech. That's it. Your speech. What did you plan to say at the Charter Day ceremony, Mr. Wellman?
Well, I open by saying, ladies and gentlemen.
That's very good, very good.
It is?
Of course it is. Because after all, the people you're talking to are ladies and gentlemen. Now, keep the point of the nail against your left thumb.
Oh, yes. It struck me as being a rather good way to start.
Oh, yes, it is. Now, keep the head against the right thumb. See, that's it. Now, then what do you say?
And then I say, we are gathered here today.
Ah, that's nice.
You like that, Mrs. Hall?
Yes, I do, Mr. Wellman. After all, it is today. And they will be gathered there. It has something of the truth and simplicity of the Gettysburg Address. And then how does your speech go, Mr. Wellman?
And then I say, we are gathered here today to honor the men and women who, by their noble deeds and humility...
The door.
Yes, dear, I heard it.
But that's your cue.
Yes.
I mean, you're on.
Vicky, I may be on, but I'd prefer to have the reminder couched in slightly more formal terms. This is an occasion of some importance.
May I go with you?
Of course.
Well, I'll just stand here off stage and watch.
Well, it's funny, I thought...
Good morning, sir.
Oh, there you are, down there.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Master Scholar.
It is my pleasure, sir, as well as my duty to inform you that I bear a message from the Chief Proctor.
What is the message, Master Scholar?
Sir, the faculty and the students escorting the charter bearing the seal of the colony are approaching.
Thank you, Master Scholar, and good morning.
Good morning to you, sir.
Now, shouldn't you be getting ready?
Well, the procession will take a little time to get here, but I should get started.
Let me help you on with your robe, Toddy. Now, there. That's it. Oh, you do look pretty.
Thank you, my dear. Where is Mr. Wellman? Has your medicine cured him?
I think so. He told me so himself. Oh, he wouldn't miss the boat. Not that I'm against boat missing. In fact, darling, I like people who miss boats.
Well, if that's a personal reference, my dear, missing a boat was the most intelligent thing I ever did. Young Professor Hall on board ship with only a few minutes remaining of his 5 months sabbatical in England. His last few dollars invested in a passage from Southampton back home to New York. And his emotions invested in a beautiful actress whom he would probably never see again.
William, dear, that's the last going ashore warning.
Yes, I know.
And I haven't got a ticket. So if you don't mind letting go of me, I'd better be...
Oh, that can't possibly be the last warning. They must give several. Good heavens, they don't expect people to dash aboard, hand somebody a basket of fruit and dash off again. Oh, Vicky, I
wish they'd play something a little less sentimental, don't you?
Yes.
It's difficult enough to wish a friend goodbye on New Year's Eve. Without underscoring it like that.
I hate saying goodbye to you anywhere at any time, Victoria. Oh, mere words at times like these.
I haven't many words either, William. About 3, in fact. Little ones.
3 little words for me? Vicky, you don't mean...
Yes. I'll miss you.
Oh, yes. That is 3 words, isn't it?
And I'm sure not the 3 words he wanted to hear. From January 27th, 1950, Ronald and Benita Coleman in the Halls of Ivy. Thanks for listening to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station. The conclusion, along with an episode of Fibber McGee and Molly, coming up straight ahead. But first, these important messages. Thank you for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, that is me. And now the conclusion of the Halls of Ivy, January 27th, 1950.
You know, it's going to be hard to concentrate on my work when I get back to the United States.
I like that.
I'll forever be thinking such thoughts as, this is Monday. It was on a Monday that Victoria and I drove to Stratford to see Shakespeare's home.
Stop for buns at Banbury Cross on the way.
Then on Tuesday, it was a Tuesday that Victoria and I visited Madame Tussaud's waxworks.
Yeah, and you tried to tip the wax doorman.
And on a Thursday, oh, Vicky, I wish we had it all to do over again.
Perhaps we can. Sometime soon.
I'm afraid not soon, dear. Professors don't get sabbaticals every year.
I know. But the play I'm in might be produced in New York.
When? Has it been? Did you? Has anything been said about it?
No, but something's going to be.
Oh, good. Vicky.
Yes?
Will you remember the address I gave you and write to me?
Yes. Of course I will, dear. I promise. And if you let go my hands, I'll cross my heart.
I don't want to let you go, Vicky. Ever.
William, dear, I must leave.
Yes, I know. Vicky, I love you very much. Will you marry me?
Oh, you know I will. I thought you were going to leave without asking me.
Yes, I almost did. Oh, darling. What's that? Oh, it's the steward. Yes, steward, take my luggage ashore. I'm not sailing. Come on, Vicky.
William, dear, it's Mr. Wellman.
Oh, good. He's just in time. I say, Wellman, take these bags off the ship. I'm taking the next one. Hurry now. That's a good chap.
No, William. It's Mr. Wellman, our guest.
Well, why doesn't he take the luggage, eh? Well, our guest.
Were you talking about me, Dr. Hall? And what? Luggage?
What luggage? Did I say... Oh, it's you, Mr. Wellman. I'm sorry.
William, where have you been?
I'm afraid I was a little bit at sea, my dear. Or almost. I'm sorry, Mr. Wellman. It was, oh, good heavens. What's happened to your nose? It looks like a nose again.
Doesn't it, though? Doesn't it? That's exactly what it looks like. That's a remarkable remedy you possess, Mrs. Hall. Horseshoe nail. Remarkable. Entirely remarkable. And may I say, Dr. Hall, that your robe is extremely becoming?
Thank you.
And I hope mine has as fine a drape.
Well, I see no reason why it shouldn't.
Then you'll be in the ceremony, Mr. Wellman.
Oh, of course. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Going to read a speech. Darn good speech, too. Dictated myself. Reminded Mrs. Hall of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address.
Oh, I'm delighted. Here, let me help you on with your gown.
Thank you.
There it is. Our caps, if you please, Victoria. Thank you. Are you ready, sir?
I am. My arm, Mrs. Hall. All ready, Doctor.
What are you thinking, Toddy?
What I always think when I hear that song. Socrates questioning the Athenian youth. Renaissance students obtaining licenses to make their way through college. Dr. Einstein playing his violin, safe on the campus at Princeton instead of being a bit of charred bone at Buchenwald or Auschwitz. Sir Francis Bacon catching the cold from which he died by stuffing a fowl with snow to test the theory of refrigeration. And astronomers alone in observatories on cold and starry nights. And the inscription carved above the library entrance, "You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free." Vicky, look. There goes Wellman. What the devil was that shingle nonsense you gave him?
Well, it isn't nonsense if it works, dear. And it did work. Look at him. See how he's squared his shoulders. I just gave him back a little self-confidence, and his nose deflated like a great big red in a tube. It was fascinating.
I imagine it was. Why don't you ever give me a treatment like that?
You don't need it, Toddy.
Oh, I'm not so sure of that today. I'm afraid this speech of mine is a trifle weak.
Your speeches are never weak. How does it go?
Well, I begin by saying, honored visitors, governors, gentlemen of the faculty, and students.
Splendid, splendid.
You think so?
Yes, perfect. How does it go from there?
Well, then I say, having but recently been reappointed as president of Ivy College...
Oh, William, that's wonderful, because you were just recently appointed. Go on.
It is my considered opinion that in the ensuing semester, the plans which we have formed... maybe this speech is better than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, after that, I say...
Yes, dear?
You can even do it without a nail, can't you?
I was curious. I tasted it. Now I know why Schlitz is the beer that made Milwaukee famous.
And here again are Mr. and Mrs. Ronald Coleman.
My dear, your choice of that horseshoe nail I thought was very silly at first, but I'm beginning to regard it as being richly symbolic.
Symbolic? For what, for goodness sake?
Well, of Mr. Wellman's being continually underfoot. Did I ever recite my little verse on superstition? I rather fancied myself as a poet when quite young.
Go on, I'd love to hear it.
Well, to the best of my memory, it went... From ancient days, the symbols came. The sign, the amulet, the charm, the seal, the ring, the coin, a name to conjure with and shield from harm. Faith in and dread of all these things is one of man's great racial quirks. But down through time, the question rings, why scorn the gimmick if it works?
Oh, darling, I do think that's wonderful. But is it just superstition when it works? Do you mean that?
Vicky, that's why poets live in inaccessible garrets, so no one can ask them what they mean. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
We'll be seeing you next week at this time at the Halls of Ivy, starring Mr. and Mrs. Ronald Coleman. The other players were Herbert Butterfield, Gloria Gordon, Peter Leeds, and Henry Blair. Tonight's script was written by Walter Brown Newman and Don Quinn. Our music was composed and conducted by Henry Russell. The Halls of Ivy was created by Don Quinn, directed by Nat Wolfe, and presented by the Joseph Schlitz Brewing Company of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Ken Carpenter speaking.
Oh, we love the halls of ivy that surround us here today, and we will not forget though we be far, far away.
January 27th, 1950, The Halls of Ivy on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, an episode of Fibber McGee and Molly. This goes back to January 27th, 1956.
Again, we invite you to listen to the transcribed adventures of Fibber McGee and Molly. The show is written by Phil Leslie and Ralph Goodman and directed by Max Hutto. While Mr. McGee was downtown this morning, an old friend phoned him but didn't leave his name. Naturally, Mr. McGee is curious.
But gee whiz, Molly, didn't you ask him who was calling?
Yes, McGee, I told you. He said he'd rather not say. He wanted to surprise you. Said he was in town between trains and he'd call back.
Hey, wait a minute. Fred Nittany. That's who it is. I'll bet you that's who it was, Fred Nittany. You know old Fred Nittany, the guy that I and him had a vaudeville act together from Starved Rock, Illinois together. You remember old Fred.
No, it was not Fred Nittany. I know Fred Nittany.
Yeah, but maybe...
And not once did this man say, I love my wife, but oh, you kid. Or get some more rubber bands, sis. I'm snapping them tonight.
Well, maybe he just didn't think
And besides that, when I picked up the phone, I heard the porter say, I checked your bags. Will that be all, sir? And he said, yes, son. Here's $1.
Oh. Well, no, I guess it wasn't old Fred.
I'll get it. Coming.
I wish he'd hurry up and call back whoever it is. This suspense is...
Well, Dr. Gamble.
Had a gruff voice, did you say, Molly?
How are you, my dear?
Yes, dearie, very gruff. Come in, Doctor.
Gruff voice? What's this about a gruff voice?
Oh, McGee was out a little while ago, and he got a phone call. And the party at the other end said he's an old friend of McGee's. Said he'd call back. Wanted to surprise him.
That's it. There it is, kiddo. I'll get it. Ooh.
Heavenly days, McGee. Be careful.
McGee's residence. McGee speaking. Hello. Who? No. Well, I'll be a... What are you doing in town? I thought you were in California.
Well, now maybe the mystery will be cleared up.
Why, you old dog.
Who is it, dearie?
Why, you old dog.
Dearie, who is it?
Why, you old dog.
Quite obvious, my dear. It's Rin Tin Tin. Who else? Ask him how Lassie is, McGee.
Oh, cut it out, will you, Fatso? I can't hear a word he says.
Who is it, McGee?
Hello. No, my wife and a big, fat, wisecracking friend of ours. Just a minute. Hold the line. Molly, you'll never guess who this is.
That's for sure. Now, if you'll only...
It's old Cappy.
Cappy?
Yeah. Captain Clarence Worsakroskowitz. My old commanding officer. From the First World War, the big war.
Oh, that one.
You guys remember me telling you about him. You know, the guy that nobody could pronounce his last name and he was so tough we didn't dare call him Clarence. It's him. His train doesn't leave until midnight.
Well, heavenly days, don't just stand there keeping the poor man hanging on the line. Invite him over for dinner.
Is it okay? I wanted to.
Why, sure. You come over too, Doctor.
Well, thanks, Molly. It sounds like fun.
Gee, that's swell. Hello, Cappy. This is Private McGee again. Yeah. Come on over to the house for dinner tonight. Yeah, sure, it's okay. I'm the man of the house, ain't I? Anyway, I want you to meet my wife and a friend of ours. I've been telling them how you and I won the war. Yeah, practically single-handed, with a little help from Pershing and some of those other blokes.
Oh, I hope the steaks turn out all right. I guess I shouldn't be worried. They say Army men can eat anything.
Well, the table's all set, kiddo.
Yep, can we help with something else?
You don't have to help with anything, Fatso. Just sit and read your medical journal and stop stealing olives. He's stealing olives, Molly.
Well, so are you. He took one, too, Molly. If he hadn't started it, I
Now,
wouldn't...
you boys stop it. The captain will be here any minute.
Yeah, a little dignity, Doctor, please. Gee, wait till you two meet old Cappy. Boy, there was a brave guy. He won so many decorations that when he put them all on, he looked like a Christmas tree. I remember he
McGee, look. There's a cab pulling up out front. Quick, how do I look?
Oh, fine. Stop fussing with your hair. Ah, good old Cappy. Wait till I go put on my old army cap. Oh, the mademoiselle from Armentières Bar.
McGee! Oh, dear, this is going to be quite a night.
That's him. I'll get the door.
Is this the residence? Ah, goof off!
Cappy! Why, you old dog. You old dog. Why, you old dog.
Here we go again.
Yeah.
Come in. Come on in. Oh, I didn't notice the cane. You're limping, Cappy.
Oh, forget it.
I haven't seen you since Le Mans, but I didn't know.
Oh, it's nothing. Say, this must be that pretty girl whose picture you carried with you everywhere you went, Molly Driscoll.
How do you do, I'm sure. This is indeed an honor, Captain.
She's Mrs. McGee now. I sure can pick 'em, eh, Cappy?
Oh, McGee. Captain, I'd like you to meet a dear friend of ours, Dr. Gamble.
Oh, how do you do, sir?
Well, this is indeed a pleasure. We've heard so much about you from McGee.
Oh, has he been telling those stories again?
Notice that, kiddo, how he refused to discuss that bum foot of his? Now, there's a real hero.
Doctor, did you say? An MD?
Yeah.
Probably got it in the big push. And
McGee, let's drop it if he'd rather
You know,
not
this is
talk
fortunate, Doctor. Perhaps you can give me some advice about this blasted foot of mine. I've got an ingrown toenail that's just killing me, and I've tried everything I know how.
Well, you might as well put the stakes on. Old army men are usually hungry, and it's getting late, so let's go.
Oh, that's the funniest yarn yet.
Oh, you fell right into the mashed potatoes, huh?
Yeah, head first into 500 pounds of mashed spuds, just as the colonel came through on mess inspection.
Oh, no.
I'm telling you, when McGee stuck his head up through that mound of mashed potatoes, saw the colonel and saluted, I thought the roof would fall in.
Ah, for the love of Mike, Cappy, you promised not to tell anybody about that.
Oh, I only tell it to people who are your friends, McGee.
Well, dinner's about ready, gentlemen, so if you'll come into the dining room.
Oh, before we eat, is there time for just one more story about this amazing husband of yours, Mrs. McGee? This is a story I'm especially fond of.
No more stories. The steak's on. Come on, everybody. Let's eat. Come on.
It's the one about the recon patrol, McGee. The time they asked for volunteers and you stepped forward because you'd been on KP for 8 straight weeks and you said you wanted to get out of doors for a while.
Oh, come on, Cappy. Not that. Skip it, will you? They're not interested.
Who's not interested? I'm finally getting the real straight dope on your war record at last, Sonny. Go on, tell it, Cappy.
I'll turn the broiler down.
Oh, gee.
Go on ahead, Captain. I can hear you out here.
Well, there were 10 of us out on reconnaissance patrol, out in the middle of nowhere, creeping along in the mud. When McGee says, "One of you guys got a flashlight? I just lost my shoe."
Yeah, that's it. Well, come on, now, let's see.
Well, just at that moment, an enemy flare goes off over our heads, and down we go on our faces. All except McGee, of course. He's still groping around for his shoe.
Look, Cappy.
Well, we all got up with our eyes full of mud, couldn't see a thing, and completely lost. Except McGee, of course. And he hollers, "Follow me, you guys. I'll lead you out of this way." Well, we thought he knew where he was going.
How'd I know that shell hole was there? I fell into it before I ever saw it.
We all fell into it, head over heels. You never saw such a mixed-up mess of men and mud in your life. Well, as soon as things quieted down a little, the lieutenant in charge of the patrol crawled ahead to see if he could find a way out. Just then a flare went off and lit things up again. McGee hollered, "We must be on somebody's farm, fellas. There's a barbed wire fence."
Oh, no. Fence, huh?
Right at that moment, the machine guns opened up, and they got the lieutenant in the legs. Down he went in the mud back of the wire. Couldn't move.
Oh, the poor lad.
McGee, as usual, was standing up and saw it, and before anybody knew what was happening, he was off and running through that barbed wire like Crazy Legs Hirsch. And just as another flare went off, he flopped down beside the lieutenant.
What, McGee?
And do you know what this crazy little husband of yours did, Mrs. McGee? He dragged that shave tail an inch at a time every time the flares went out, till he got him back to safety. Well, if he hadn't, I never would have lived to make captain.
All right, come on, Cappy. Let's eat.
Well, I guess you're Your old commanding officer is on his way back to California by now, McGee. And it was just a wonderful evening.
It sure was.
I'm so proud of you. Why, you were a hero. A real hero.
Oh, shucks.
Dr. Gamble was just amazed. You never told me that story, McGee. Why haven't you ever told anyone?
Well, I don't know. Gee whiz, Doc Gamble wouldn't have believed me anyhow. It's better this way.
Well, you're probably right about that. But I'd have believed...
Besides, old Cappy left out one important part of it.
What was that?
Well, you heard him say I'd been on KP for 8 straight weeks when I went out on that patrol.
Yes?
Well, when he got shot through the leg out there, I happened to know that he had a 3-day pass to Paris for me all made out and signed in his hip pocket. Whiz, I wasn't going to let a 3-day pass lay there in the mud and go...
Oh.
No, sir. So long, everybody.
See you Monday.
Dr. Gamble is played by Arthur Q. Bryan. Captain Clarence Wascrose, or what McGee said, was played by Joseph Kearns, who can't pronounce it either. Well, so much for Cappy's reminiscences of the First World War, the Big War. On Monday, the McGees return to life in the present and arrange for the installation of one of our strictly modern devices calculated to save Molly work. This is John Wald wishing you a happy weekend, hoping we'll have you with us again Monday.
From January 27th, 1956, Fibber McGee and Molly here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. That's our new name, in case you didn't notice. If you follow our podcasts, that's where they are. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. You can find the podcasts anywhere they're served if you miss a day on this station, or if you just want to collect them. I don't know why you'd want to collect them. Why don't you collect postage stamps or something reasonable? But Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, you can find them on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all the major podcast platforms. You search for my name, Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Our webpage, classicradio.stream. Please thank this radio station and support their advertisers, and tell your friends that great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station.